I found the pirate map in a cramped antique stall on the edge of town. The vendor shrugged it off as junk, but when I unfolded it, the ink smelled like salt and old storms. 3 words were scrawled across the corner in a hand that had bled into the paper. Do not go. In the next 20 seconds, I knew 2 things with ugly clarity. This map would not let me sleep, and whatever it pointed to was already watching us back. We drove into the dawn like a handful of desperados, me, Jade, and Marcus. Jade runs the kind of research that eats up myths and spits out cold facts. Marcus digs, the kind of man who can find secrets buried under 3 generations of lies. The camera rolls because that's proof, insurance, and a promise. I say the hook into the microphone, my voice tight with anger and curiosity at once. We found a pirate map that says, do not go, so we went. The frame snaps to the map, the red X, and the world leaning forward to see. The island was a slab of land history forgot. The pier fell apart like a memory. A rusted lighthouse leaned as if listening to the sea. Locals watched us with the practiced indifference of people who carry their own grief. The island has the kind of silence that holds stories like stones. On the shore, we found a cave mouth half buried in kelp and algae. The map's X was clear, a small inlet marked with a single crude cross. The dig wasn't a dig, it was a descent. The sand gave way to time-worn timbers and a chest embroidered with salt. We hauled it out like thieves. When we pried the lid open, the smell of old paper hit like a confession. There was no gold, no glittering coins. There was a ledger bound in leather and a tiny carved idol with 3 waves across its belly. The ledger had names and entries, payments listed not as receipts, but as transactions in silence. The idol felt like a promise and a warning. Reading the ledger changed the tone. Merchant names, dates, manifest notes, entries that said miscellaneous and captain's discretion. We started to see patterns. Small freighters, late-night docks, payments described with euphemisms that hid people. The ledger tied island merchants to a company in the city with a shiny facade and a bank account that would make a saint blush. As we read, someone slipped a paper under our tent, "Do not provoke the sea." We recorded the note with trembling hands. The island was not only a place, it was a memory being protected. Back on the mainland, the internet woke. We posted the 30-second hook, and the map became a magnet. People care for 2 reasons: treasure and truth. The comments lit on fire. Some wanted bounty, some wanted justice. Anonymous messages slid into our inbox, polite at first. We advised caution. One man with better tailoring and worse intentions offered funding with conditions. Let us manage the relic. His smile was a contract of ash. We followed names through archives and courthouses. The ledger's ink bled through time into modern corporate records. A company, Lockhart and Company, had transformed from a merchant line to a pillar of the city. The ledger linked that lineage to shipments labeled in code, payments described like invoices. We found relatives of ledger names, children who carried forgotten grief in their bones. Some had graves with no markers, others had more visible scars. We dug where the ledger told us to dig, and the sand gave up more than objects. It gave up history. The first violent pushback came in the fog. Our car was rammed on a coastal road. Drives vanished when someone hit delete. A bullet found the hood as a punctuation mark. We could have run. We didn't. Instead, we published. Putting truth into the world became armor. Flimsy, but a tool. We pressed on and found Evelyn, a woman with salt cracked hands who held an album of letters and receipts and children's drawings that looked like ruins. Her grandfather's name was in the ledger. Her memory stitched a story to the dry ledger entries. She said quietly, "We thought hiding it would fix us. It only swallowed us." Each video peeled a layer. We showed ledger scans with magnified entries, cross-referenced shipping logs, and geolocated coordinates. We brought in maritime historians who winced at line items and anthropologists who tied cultural erasure to human profit. We exposed a chain: petty bribery, hush payments, shipment manifests gone dark. The ledger no longer felt like paper. It felt like a rope thrown across centuries, connecting hands that once pulled it to hands that still hold it. Threats escalated when we named a donor on a gala list. One witness's house burned down in a blue flame night. Another source disappeared. The comments split into tribes. Some called us heroes, others called us fools. Lawyers flooded our inbox. Cease and desist, libel threats, hints of lawsuits. Lockhart's PR team issued statements that sounded like absolution. The city watched, divided between outrage and the instinct to protect its own. Our small rituals became anchors: a cup of coffee before interviews, a silence before every camera roll, a promise to protect names when we could. Marcus nearly walked away after a threatening call. Jade sat on his stoop at dawn with an overnight bag and said, "We don't let them scare your family." We kept going because backing down would be a different kind of silence. A dusty municipal shipping log gave us the Helene Mara, a freighter that once ran the island line. A surviving mate's memory, it stank of wrong, became a hinge for prosecutors. In court, the ledger read aloud matched that mate's voice, and the room felt like a cathedral. People cried. Faces in the gallery were a mix of steel and ruin. The chairman of Lockhart and Company sat stone-faced as the prosecutor connected ledger entries to modern donors and payments. The chairman's calm was a costume. Lockhart fought back with smoke and mirrors. Forensics teams were hired to discredit our footage. They claimed doctored files. We anticipated it. Stored chain of custody records, backups, timestamps, raw files pushed to multiple nodes. An old friend in digital forensics told us, truth, when properly archived, becomes a kind of immunity, and it became ours. One pivotal witness, Thomas, cracked. He confessed to loading crates and looking away. He cried on the stand and described the sound of lost children at sea. His testimony matched the ledger. He agreed to cooperate in exchange for immunity. That moment, when Ledger Inc. met human memory, shifted the case from story to prosecution. As investigations unfolded, the city changed in small, visible ways. Monuments in municipal plazas added plaques noting histories previously glossed over. Foundations issued statements promising reform. Directors resigned, some with dignity, some with teeth clenched. But the ledger's exposure also bred collateral harm. A whistleblower who planned to speak on camera took her life. We found her note, and the rawness of it shaped every subsequent edit. Revelations carry casualties. We held a public reading of names on a windswept island beach. People, descendants, journalists, locals, stood shoulder to shoulder and read names into the wind. Each name was a small act of reclamation. Some threw stones into the surf in memory. Others cried. The tide came in, slow and respectful. Legal settlements followed. Reparations were discussed and planned. Some families accepted apologies. Others wanted more than words. The landscape of power shuddered. Shell companies were peeled back. A slush fund traced through a maze of charities and shell corporations was exposed. Lockhart's accounts were frozen. Some directors faced indictment. The chairman's trial was televised. Long, messy, human. He read a statement about mistakes and oversight, but offered no apology that matched the harm. The verdicts were uneven, as justice often is. Some were held accountable, some denied responsibility, and some slipped into the fog. In the private trenches, we argued about ethics. How much do you show? Who do you protect? Jade wanted redactions. Marcus wanted every name public. The ledger demanded naming, but people are alive and fragile. We compromised when we had to. We kept records, unedited copies, sealed evidence accessible to prosecutors so the truth couldn't be erased by a court of PR. Marcus disappeared for 2 days. His phone went dark. I found him at an old pier, hands on the rail, staring at black water. He admitted someone had threatened his sister. He whispered, "They know how to scare me." We tightened our circle, arranged safe housing for his family, and pushed the story harder. Sending the message that we would not be cowed mattered as much as any legal filing. The map, folded and battered, sat on my desk most nights. I used to stare at it with hunger. The X pulled at something greedy in me. Later, I stared with a kind of exhausted respect. One night, after a long day of testimony and cross-examination, I walked the island shore, laid the map on the sand, and watched the ink blur into wet grains. I didn't burn it. I didn't hide it. I folded it and put it in a drawer labeled Evidence. Publishing was never just about clicks. It became a civic act. We released raw documents, ledger scans, and geolocation files to independent journalists and to a public repository. We created redundancies so no single actor could erase the record. When one of our servers was attacked, copies existed elsewhere. The map's X had become less of a treasure marker and more of a brand for accountability. When Lockhart's chairman was indicted, families gathered in the sunlight outside the courthouse. Some shouted, some sobbed, some stood silent as monuments. The trial did not fix everything. Names were missing. Some perpetrators could not be reached. But the ledger's exposure forced institutions to confront their pasts. Public museums returned artifacts tied to dubious shipments. Charities audited their histories. The city booked public hearings. After verdicts and settlements, memorials were planned at beaches where small unmarked graves were found. We helped organize a small stone garden where descendants could leave tokens. The camera filmed faces, grief, relief, anger, and a hollow satisfaction that justice, when it comes, is often partial. The island remained. The sea kept its rhythm. Some things were exposed, some were buried again with stronger stones. The closing footage is quieter. Waves, the ledger on a table, Evelyn reading a letter aloud as she presses a hand to her chest. Marcus sits on a rock, watching gulls like a man who learned to read the sky. Jade flips through archive photos and lets a single tear fall. I look into the camera, and the noise of everything settles into one sentence. We chased a map for treasure, we found responsibility. It is not a heroic line. It is weary and honest. If you watched until the end, you've been with us through storms and dark rooms, through courtrooms and beaches, through a city that had to look at its own shadow. The map's warning, "Do not go," was a plea and a gate. Going wasn't just curiosity, it was a moral decision. We chose to go. The cost was real, and the gains were human. Names remembered, small restitution offered, institutions forced to answer. The work keeps going. The ledger sits in public record now, but memory is the real thing we built. Share it if you feel it matters. Hold these names with care. If you find your own map, your family, truth tucked in a trunk, an old ledger in a closet, bring witnesses, bring lawyers, bring compassion. The world will try to silence some stories for profit. We learned that loudness is a form of protection. This wasn't treasure hunting. It was waking a sleeping city. The pier groaned beneath us as the tide rolled in, and the whole place smelled like salt, diesel, and something older. Something that didn't belong to the century we were in. Jessie kept glancing over her shoulder like she expected the harbor master to come sprinting out of the fog with a shotgun, but nobody came. The world felt paused, like the ocean itself was holding its breath. "Okay," I whispered, unrolling the map on a crate. "If that red line really moves depending on who's holding it, then it shouldn't matter where we stand, right?" Except it did matter, because the second the map opened, the red ink shimmered and snaked across the parchment like a living thing, settling into a new path. A path that cut straight across the bay toward a cluster of abandoned docks no one had used in decades. The kind fishermen talk about but never visit. The kind older people warn you to stay away from, unless you want the ocean to take something from you. I felt my stomach flip. "You feel that?" I said. "Feel what?" Noah answered. "The air just changed." And it really did. It got colder, sharper, like the space around us suddenly dropped 10 degrees. Noah shoved the map away like it burned him. "Dude, screw this. I'm done. I'm not chasing some cursed GPS from the 1800s. But Jessie didn't move. She stared at the docks, at that distant silhouette of broken buildings, like she recognized it. "Wait," she whispered. "I've seen that place." My brain stopped. "What do you mean you've seen it?" I asked. Jessie's jaw tightened. She didn't blink. "Because my grandfather drew that same dock in one of his journals." The hairs on my arm stood up. "You never mentioned that." "He was a smuggler," she muttered. "Not a criminal. More like someone who brought people out of bad places. He helped refugees escape across the water during the Cold War. And he always talked about a hideout, somewhere nobody could find unless they were marked." The word hung in the air. Marked. "Jess," I said quietly, "what if this map belonged to him?" She shook her head, hard. "No, it's impossible. He disappeared when my dad was a kid. Nobody ever found a trace." Noah groaned. "Guys, please don't tell me we're going to follow this." But we were going to follow it. We knew it. Every one of us knew it the second the line shifted across the page. Something wanted us there. Something tied to Jessie's family, tied to the ship, tied to the bones we found. We climbed into Noah's small fishing boat, the one that rattled when the motor started because it was older than all of us put together. As we pulled off the pier, the city behind us disappeared into fog so thick it felt alive. The only sound was the slicing of water and the distant groans of the abandoned docks growing larger. Noah tried to play it off, tapping the wheel with fake confidence. "Look, we go there, we look around, we find nothing, we trash the footage, we get burgers, okay? Easy." But then we hit the fog bank. Not normal fog, not even close. It wrapped around the boat like a wall, slick, cold, heavy. The boat's engine sputtered. My ears popped like we were diving underwater. And for a second, I swear on everything, I heard voices, not speaking, not yelling, just humming. like a low choir beneath the surface. I grabbed the bench. Tell me you heard that. Jessie didn't answer. She just pointed. The fog started to thin, slowly, and the abandoned docks came into view. Except they weren't abandoned. At least, not right now. Lanterns flickered along the posts. Warm yellow lanterns no modern fisherman uses. Boats. Actual wooden boats with tar sails rocked gently in the water like they were tied there minutes ago. Crates sat stacked along the pier, stamped with symbols I didn't recognize. And on one of the beams, carved deep into the wood, was a mark. The same symbol from the corner of the map. A serpent coiled around a nail. Noah killed the engine instinctively. Okay, what? What kind of historical Disneyland nightmare is this? We drifted in. No wind, no birds, no voices. Just a silent, perfectly preserved smuggler's port that shouldn't exist. The moment our boat touched the dock, every lantern flickered simultaneously, and somewhere in the distance, a metal chain rattled, slowly, deliberately, like someone or something was pulling it. Jessie stepped off first. I need to see if his journal matches this place, she whispered, pulling out her phone. There was a sketch, a doorway with... She froze mid-sentence because the doorway was right there in front of her. Not just similar, identical, same shape, same broken beam, same old sign above it with flaking paint that once spelled out Harbor House. Noah stood behind us, his breathing loud. This place is a time capsule, a full-on illegal museum. How is this real? I swallowed hard. Because it's not a museum. I knelt and touched the dock. The wood wasn't old. It wasn't the soft, worn texture you expect from something that survived a century of storms. It was smooth, new, glossy almost. These docks weren't abandoned. They were being used. Recently. A faint clang echoed from the far warehouse. Something scraping the floor. Something heavy. Noah backed up. Nope. You two want to die investigating your family drama? Be my guest. But before he could step onto the boat, the map crinkled in Jessie's pocket. It didn't just move, it pulled, like a magnet dragging her forward. She winced, clutching her side. It's doing it again. Take it out, I said. She did. The entire map began glowing, not bright, but faint enough that we all saw it. The red ink became almost liquid again, and the path redrew itself, leading straight into the darkened warehouse where the scraping sound had come from. Okay, Noah whispered. That's enough. Forget burgers. Forget footage. This is therapy-level bad juju. I'm out. He tried to step back onto the boat. The boat drifted away by itself, like invisible hands pushed it off the dock. I gasped. No hand on the rope. Noah, you didn't tie it? I did, he yelled, running to the edge. I tied it twice. That knot was, hey, get back. The boat drifted into the fog, gone in seconds, just swallowed. Jessie turned around slowly, her voice shaking for the first time ever. We don't have a choice now. I hate how right she was. I swallowed hard. Then we stick together. No splitting up, no wandering off. If something moves, we leave. If someone speaks, we run. If anything touches us... Yeah, Noah muttered. I screamed like a kindergarten kid on a roller coaster. Got it. We walked toward the warehouse, boots echoing on the boards. The door was half cracked, like someone left in a hurry. Inside, it was pitch black, except for one thing. A lantern, hanging from the ceiling, swinging slowly, and beneath it, a table, covered in maps, dozens of them, hand-drawn, water-stained, burned along the edges, some so old they looked ready to turn to dust. And at the very center of the table was a journal, not just any journal, a leather-bound book with the initials carved into the cover. I am Jessie, choked on her breath. That's my grandfather's name, and that's where our story ends for now. If you made it all the way here, you're officially part of this madness, part of this crew, and honestly, I don't know what's waiting for us next, but I promise you this, it's not over, not even close. So if you want to be here when the next piece of the puzzle finally snaps into place, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, do whatever you gotta do, just don't disappear on me now. Because the next story, yeah, it's already chasing us. See you soon. Stay brave.